Hello BookTube and welcome to Novel Expectations. My name is Sarah and I'm coming to you today with my September 2016 wrap-up. This is the first wrap-up of this kind that I've done. Like, I did a little one in August, but it really wasn't what I wanted my wrap-ups to be. And I really hope you guys enjoy this. I'm pretty much going to go through how I'm doing currently on my challenges. I'm going to tell you guys about my reading stats for the month. And then I'm going to, of course, go through the books that I finished this month. So let's jump right in and get started. So for my challenges, according to Goodreads, I am currently 3 books ahead of schedule. For my A to Z Authors Challenge, I'm now at 18 out of 26 books. For my A to Z Title Challenge, I'm now at 20 out of 26 books. For my 2016 How Many Pages Challenge, I have read 22,064 pages out of 25,000 pages, which means I have done 88% of my goal. For the Jelly Belly Jelly Bean Challenge, still no flavors completed. And for my Listopia Challenge, I am still only on level 1, but I am at 22 out of 25 challenges completed. If you guys are interested to find out what all these challenges are, I don't mind talking about them, but I don't want to reiterate it every month. So if you have any questions, just please leave them in the down bar below and I'll answer them, no problem. So my stats for September. I read a grand total of 9 books this month. I read 5 3-star books, 2 4-star books, and 2 5-star books. So not too shabby. All of them I really enjoyed. For the book genres, I read 2 YA books, 1 memoir, 2 historical fiction novels, 1 romantic suspense / paranormal novel, 2 contemporary romance novels, and a middle grade book. And I read 5 ebooks, 2 audiobooks, and 2 print books. My page count for the month was 2,396, which averaged out to about 80 pages read a day. So I'm pretty pleased with all that. So now I'm going to get into the books that I finished and my ratings and thoughts on them. So instead of going through the list of, this is the book I read at the beginning of the month to the newest book that I read, I'm actually listing these in order of my personal ratings on them. Now, as you guys know, when you're rating a book, you can give a book a 3-star. You could give 2 books both 3-star ratings, but one of them is going to rate just a bit higher than the other if you liked one more than the other. Am I right? So that's how these are going. It's not like these are all the 3-star books and these are all the 4-star books. These are actually from my least favorite book of the month to my most favorite book of the month. And not to say that I did not like my least favorite books. They just, out of all the books that I read this month, they happen to be not my favorites. Not the best ones I read. So we will start off with, sorry, I'm just trying to get myself organized here. Playing with Fire by Francine Pascal. This is the 3rd book in the Sweet Valley High series. I gave this book 3 stars. I didn't mind it. It was great nostalgic value to me, and I am really enjoying rereading through the series. But as you're reading this, it really shows how much society has changed. There's a character in the stories by the name of Robin, and they go on and on about how pudgy this girl is, and it's so mean, and, I also think these kids are only 16 years old. I'm like, what are you doing? How do your parents not know where you are? But then again, when I was 16, I thought I was like a full-grown adult, and I knew all the things, but I did not know all the things. At 37, I still don't know all the things. But yeah, 3 stars. I mean, it wasn't bad. It is what it is. I'm glad I'm rereading the series as it was originally written and not as the revamped editions that they've done and now put out a couple of years ago, because it is kind of interesting to see how society has changed since these were originally written. So next up is a book called Last Resort by Jill Sanders. This is the 1st book in the Grayton series, and I also gave this book 3 stars. This one was not, I enjoyed it. And I did buy the next book in the series because I would like to continue on with the series because I really did like the characters. The writing left something to be desired. I found it very jumpy. Within a paragraph, you could span, a month of time. And I understand they were moving the story along, but, sometimes in a story when you get a larger span of time that's passing, you'll get one of those like little markers on the page between the paragraphs, and then you'll go to the next so you know. As you're reading it, like, jumps and you're suddenly like, what? How is it now, whatever time period it is. So that was a little annoying. And I think that's what really took the star rating down for me. They didn't get enough into the characters' backstories, in my opinion, because the main character, whose name I cannot remember at all right now, Cassie, um, Cassie had an amazing backstory, and they really didn't delve into that enough. I mean, they did talk about it and what happened, but it's almost like it was pretty horrific, and I don't think they gave it enough justice, and they needed to really focus on that a bit more, because it just, like I said, it felt glossed over, and that was really disappointing to me as well. But like I said, it was still a really fun contemporary romance. It is about a woman who owns a bar and grill on the boardwalk in this place called Surf City, or Surfside. It's in Florida on the Gulf Coast, and all the businesses around her who are also on this boardwalk are going through some really difficult times. And then in walks Luke, who is, his father owns a chain of hotels, and the father's trying to buy up this area and build another hotel. But like, these stores have been in the family generations for years and what have you. So anyway, it's pretty much a Romeo and Juliet type of story. It is an insta love, which kind of really bothered me. Like, within a chapter, they went from absolutely despising each other to being in bed together. But, you know, one isn't mutually exclusive, so, you know, it could happen even though they still hate each other, but you guys know what I mean. I mean, the relationship was, like, right there from the very beginning, pretty much. So that's kind of what's fun about contemporary romance, is, like, watching the relationship build. And, I mean, they do have their problems later on, and it's supposed to be just casual, but you know what I mean. Really, a cute contemporary romance. If you like that kind of thing, check it out. But be forewarned, it is not the best writing ever. Next up is a book called A Father for Jesse by Anne Roth. This is a Harlequin American romance novel, and it is about a woman named Emmy and her son Jesse, who moved to a small town. It seems like outside of Seattle, like along that coast, along the west coast. They moved from Oakland, California. The son is only 11, but the father had split from them and he walked out. And you really don't get too much in, well, I mean, you kind of get into why he left, but not really why he left. And that would have been an interesting backstory to kind of delve into. I gave this book 3 stars. I liked it. It was a cute story, and it was a rather quick read. But it's about, like I said, Emmy and her son, and they move to this small town, and they meet the local handyman named Mac. And the two of them, Emmy and Mac, kind of have a insta-love. But he's got his own plans. He's got no interest in raising somebody else's children. He raised both of his brothers from when they were young after their parents were killed in a car accident. So, you know, he just didn't have interest in that. He wanted to travel and go back to college and all this stuff. Now, they were older. They were in their 30s, but he had spent all this time raising his brothers that he never got to go to college, which is commendable. You know, of course, there's a happily ever after. I liked it. I didn't like the whole insta-love thing. That does kind of bother me in books a bit. But still, it was a really cute story, very, very well written, and I really liked the characters. And as I was reading the characters, like Mac's brothers, who are, you know, in their early 20s, I would really, really love to read stories about them, because they were really great characters, but unfortunately, this not being part of a series, I don't think that's going to happen. But I will have to keep my eye open and see if I ever come across them. The next book that I read is Dawn and the Impossible 3, book number 5 in the Babysitters Club series by Ann M. Martin. I gave this one 3 stars. This I finished literally on the last day of the month, on the 30th. I had finished 8 books as of the 29th, and I'm like, I really want to read one more book this month. And I'm like, oh, I had planned on reading this one anyway. This one is the introduction of Dawn to the Babysitters Club, and I love Dawn. She was my favorite character, my favorite babysitter. And essentially, she joins the club, and she has issues with Christy, because Christy does not like the fact that Dawn and Marianne are friends. And so she's trying to make Christy understand that she's trying not to step on her toes. Marianne can have more than one friend. So they're dealing with that, plus they're dealing with the fact that these children that Dawn has now taken on as babysitting charges are just running rampant. When she shows up at the house, the mother's completely disorganized. She's just going through a divorce, which Dawn understands, because Dawn's in Connecticut because her parents got divorced. Her dad's still in California. And, you know, like, the mom's disorganized. She never leaves any information. The house is always a mess, so Dawn's always cleaning it, you know, and looking after the kids, and the kids have attitude problems and what have you. It was a really, really good story. I know that there's also, like the Sweet Valley High that I talked about, some of these books were updated for more recent, you know, readers. But I'm really glad I'm reading the originals because, again, there is a nostalgic factor here. Like, there's one part in this book where one of these kids goes missing, and Dawn can't contact the mother. And somebody was saying on Goodreads that in the updated version, Dawn says, well, she had her cell phone off. Well, this was originally written in the early 1980s, so nobody had cell phones. And it just seems such, like, so much, it's more of a simpler time. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's part of the draw of these for me, is that, you know, I can open one of these up and not have to worry that it's going to be about a school shooting or about a rape victim or about, you know, a lot of things that are currently now in some YA literature. Now, I know this isn't YA, this is middle grade, but still some of those things are getting touched on in middle grade as well. And it's nice to go back to that simpler time, you know, when your biggest problem is that your new friend, you know, part of this new group that you're hanging out with, the one girl doesn't like you. Because she doesn't like that you're friends with her friend. You know, like, I know it seems silly, but I think that's really why I'm enjoying reading these. And same with the Sweet Valley High. Like, you know, their biggest issue is what are they going to wear to the next school dance? I know it's campy, I know it's silly, but it's fun. And every now and then, you totally need to shut your brain off and really enjoy those kind of things. That's just my opinion. And my last 3-star read of the month, which was my favorite out of all the 3-star reads, was It Ended Badly, The 13 Worst Breakups in History by Jennifer Wright. Again, I gave this book 3 stars. This book was fantastic. It read so quickly. It was essentially 13 short stories about these infamous couples in history that bad breakups happened. And when I say bad, I mean bad. Like King Henry VIII, you know, chopping the heads off wives. That's a pretty bad breakup if you ask me. Yeah, it talks about King Henry VIII. It talks about Oscar Wilde. There's a lot of great historical figures in there. Some of them I didn't know who they were, but some of them I did. And it was a lot of fun. It was really snarky, and I have to say that, but it was a fun kind of snarky. The author really wrote it well, and she wrote, even though a lot of it took place some of it hundreds and hundreds of years ago, she made it seem very modern with the way she talked about it, like, you know, if that happened today, what would be the consequences, and maybe they should have just talked, or, you know, whatever. Really, really fun. If you're into this kind of thing, if you like historical nonfiction, because it is a nonfiction novel, it's enjoyable, and it's a different kind of history. It's not a stodgy, boring history about a certain time period or what have you. It's really about the people, and it's a part of those people's lives that maybe weren't talked about as much or glossed over. Well, except for the whole King Henry beheading his wives. That was pretty much, you know, talked about a lot. But anyway, like I said, if you like that kind of thing, definitely check it out. I had one of my viewers recommend it to me. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it. And I always love getting recommendations from you guys because you guys are awesome. So now on to my 4-star reads for the month. So the very first one is History Decoded, The 10 Greatest Conspiracies of All Time by Brad Meltzer. This was narrated by Scott Brick. It was an audiobook. Like I said, 4 stars. Along the same lines of the It Happened Badly. And these were 10 conspiracy theories. And I'm not talking, you know, line your hat with tin foil kind of conspiracies. Like, this isn't like craziness. What I love about these is that this is stuff that is seriously plausible. And, okay, the alien thing, we're pretty, well, how do I put this? Do I believe in aliens? Yes, I do. Because that is a huge universe out there, and it's pretty big of us just to think that we are the only ones in that great big universe. So yes, there could be aliens. But is the government hiding it from us? That's a different story. But for the other conspiracies, for example, is there actually any gold in Fort Knox? Like, that's a legitimate thing. That vault hasn't been opened since the 1970s. Nobody's seen the inside of it. You know, there's rumors circulating that there is no more gold in Fort Knox. When Lincoln was assassinated, John Wilkes Booth, who I did not know until I listened to this, that he was actually an actor. And for the time period, he was like as big as Brad Pitt is now. So that's pretty exciting, or pretty interesting. It's something I didn't know. But he was killed a couple days later in a barn in Maryland, I think, or in Virginia. But the whole conspiracy theory is that they're saying he wasn't killed then, that he went on and lived for like another 40 years under an assumed name. And the facts and stuff that they give you in this book really makes you stop and go, wait a minute, maybe he did. You know, why was a proper autopsy not done? Why was this and that not done? So it's stuff like that. So like I said, they touch on Fort Knox. There's a part on Fort Knox. There's a part on Lincoln. Lincoln's assassination. There's a part, on, of course, on the Kennedy assassination, which is like the biggest thing. Alien theories and stuff like that. It's a really, really interesting book. Again, it's historical, but it's that part of history that you're not going to read in school, or you're not going to read out of a textbook. And the narration was really good. The guy who narrated it was fantastic. Highly enjoyed it. If you like it, definitely check that kind of thing out. Next up, Phantom Evil by Heather Graham, the first book in the Crew of Hunters series. I gave this book 4 stars. This was a reread for me. I loved this book. It was uber creepy. It was about a group of FBI ghost hunters, essentially. Kind of think the X-Files. And they go to different places and they are trying to prove or disprove ghosts or, you know, what happened. And this story, the story starts by a woman who lives in this house in New Orleans, who, as it seems, commits suicide. And the husband believes it was the ghosts in the house that killed her. Well, the house originally was very, very famous because it was the home of a serial killer back in the 1800s. And the one character in this book, Angela, starts having visions of these children who were killed in this house. Like I said, super duper creepy. Really, really good. I really liked all the characters in this. I talked about it in my October TBR in my last video that I'm going to be reading the second book this month. And one of the characters from this first book is going to appear in the next one, and I'm super excited about that because I really, really liked Jake as a character. He was great. Really enjoyed this book. Heather Graham is such an amazing writer. Highly recommend it. And now on to the 5-star books for the month. The first one was Let's Pretend This Never Happened by Jenny Lawson, also narrated by Jenny Lawson, another audiobook. This is her memoir of sorts, and as the title suggests, let's pretend this never happened, and it's a mostly true memoir, as she says. She embellishes or changes some of the things. It's hysterical. I mean, she goes right back to her childhood, to growing up in a house where her father was a taxidermist, and some of the things that she grew up around that most children would be horrified, but to her was completely normal. Goes into her meeting her husband Victor, and sadly goes through her first couple attempts at pregnancy, and she lost her first, I think, not at full term, but like she had a miscarriage. It was heartbreaking, and in the middle of this book being like hysterically funny, you get some of these very poignant, very down to earth, very sad, and true life events that happen to this poor woman. She is awesome. I follow her on Instagram. I read her blog. I adore her. I read Furiously Happy last year, which I loved, and everybody recommended that when I read this one to listen to it on audio, and I'm so glad I did. It was so, so good. I highly recommend it. If you like memoirs, definitely check it out. And she does suffer from mental illness. That is touched on in this book, but nowhere nearly as much as it is in Furiously Happy. But keep that in mind if that's something that you would be interested in reading about. And the final book for this month, the one that came out of nowhere and surprised me that this would end up being my favorite book of the month, and I guarantee you is going to hit into one of my favorite books of the year. I know. Hold on to your hats, people. My favorite book of the month, Nowhere But Here by Katie McGarity, the first book in the Thunder Road series, a YA contemporary novel. I loved this book. I could not put this book down. I'll admit at the very beginning, the first 15-20% of the book, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to like this so much. Essentially what it's about is a girl named Emily, and she's only 17, and she has this whole other family. Like, she has her mom and dad, but it's actually her adopted father. Her mother remarried, or married, or whatever, and he adopted her, so she calls him Dad. She's always known him as her father since she was like 6 or 7. Well, when she was about 7 or 8, she met her biological father, and he is a biker, with a biker gang. So on Goodreads, I saw that this book was labeled as West Side Story meets Sons of Anarchy because of the whole biker thing. So her real dad is this biker. Well, she sees him once a year. He comes to Florida to visit her from Kentucky, and that's it. They see each other for a week, and then they go on their merry way. Well, then she finds out that her grandmother died. So her mother kind of wants to make amends, maybe not make amends, but needs wants her daughter to go to the funeral. And she has never been to see her biological family on her father's side or any of that stuff. So she goes, and the string of events take place. She ends up having to stay in this small town called Snowflake, Kentucky, and she meets Oz, who is 18 years old, and he is a prospect for this biker group. Now, this isn't like a bikers group like you're assuming, like outlaws, if you will. They actually run a legitimate business. They're a security company. I mean, honestly, I think it was more the fact that I was surprised that I enjoyed this book so much. That really, really made me like it. It had its issues. You know, maybe some of the characters and some of the tropes and stuff like that. But I think what really got me with this book is that it wasn't your typical YA novel. This wasn't a teen angsty high school drama kind of book. This was about her dealing with her family and having to deal with some very serious things that were going on, as well as the fact that I felt like both Emily and Oz read older than they actually were. Like I said, she was 17, he's 18. But as you're reading it, until they mention their ages or the fact that she's still in high school or he just graduated from high school, this could have almost, and I think that's the only way it would have made this book even just a little bit better, was to write it as a new adult novel. I think it would have been a bit better. Because some of the situations are older, and, you know, you're reading about the situation, then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, she's only 17. So, yeah, but they kept them true to their age, and I did appreciate that quite a bit. I like this book so much that I actually went, as soon as I was done it, and bought the second book in the series, and pre-ordered the third book in the series, which is coming out in January. So, you know, I am not one to talk on this channel about YA novels, but I loved this book. And if it sounds like something you guys would be interested in, please check it out. It was a almost 400-page book, but I think I read it in like 4 or 5 days. Like I said, I could not put it down. I was sitting at work, and I would just be like looking at the clock going, oh, is it lunchtime yet? Can I sit down and have my salad and read my book? So, and like I said, I think it really thrilled me because it was such a surprise. I bought it expecting to like it, but I didn't buy it expecting to love it. And that is always a lot of fun when it comes to reading. So anyway, guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you read any of the books that I talked about today, or if any of them sound interesting to you. And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Bye.